Let's get straight into our first session, finding opportunities with the data you have with Bingqian Gao at Aktana and Youssef Idelcaid of Gene. I will be back at the end for the Q&A, so please feel free to ask questions in the chat. Bingqian, Youssef, over to you.
Thank you, Dario. Just to check, you're seeing the screen that I'm sharing now, right? All good for screen share? I can't see anything, so someone might need to give me an okay.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Great. Thank you, Dario. Yes, I'm very excited to be here today, and together with Youssef, we'd like to share some of our thinking and experiences in finding opportunities with the data you have in the context of laying foundation for omnichannel AI at scale. Now, whether you're about to start your AI journey or are already underway in implementing global AI solutions, we hope that you find some inspiration from the session today. We'll start by sharing some common challenges and misconceptions in AI adoption in pharma. Then we will introduce the analytics and AI maturity framework, which then sets the stage for the 3 tips we'd like to share today to achieve quick wins. Those are also packed with real-life examples as well, so we hope that there's something to take away for everyone in the audience today, whether you're more business-oriented or technical-focused. Now, before we start, I'd like to throw out a teaser question. So say if you're thinking about or implementing your data and AI strategy, think about this question. What do you need data and AI for? Now, you don't have to share the answers with us, although you're more than welcome to. Maybe just think about this to yourself and see if the answer is clear. And maybe also check if this is aligned within your team. Without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Youssef to take us through some common challenges and misconceptions about AI adoption in pharma. Youssef, over to you.
Thank you very much, Bingqian, for setting the stage for us. The answer to this question actually is fundamental, as the road for AI adoption can be very, very long and also dark. And without clear destination and map, and without the lights on, this road can easily lead to the unknown. In fact, there are many challenges and misconceptions around AI adoption, and I think this is no stranger to anyone. We mapped out a couple of them, but we're going to focus on the key ones. One of the main challenges in the adoption of AI in pharma is actually happening at the leadership level of the industry. Leaders need to articulate their vision and paint the picture of what implementing AI means to the rest of the organization and stakeholders. Throughout the years, what I have seen, many leaders invested heavily in AI because it was the next big thing to not miss, which was and still is true. AI is here to stay for sure. The only caveat is that without a value proposition, AI can easily become an extra cost center instead of value generator. Concretely, a vision can be as simple as in 5 years, 30% of drug pipeline discovery will be powered by AI, for example. I'm just making the numbers up. Another key challenge that we have sensed is related to the company data assets and tech stack. It's either too much or not enough. In both cases, it's hard to embark in the AI journey, but the good news is that there is a middle ground where data and tech can match the leadership vision by targeting low-hanging fruits that can slowly show value and bring more investments, especially at scale. Additionally, to the various challenges, there are many, countless as well misconceptions around AI adoption, such as, and I'm sure you have heard one multiple times, this one, AI is systematic, no need of human intervention, which is not true, and we all know that. We have seen robots, for example, involved in operating surgeries, but without human assistance, this won't make any sense at all, scientifically, legally, and also in terms of ethics. Another example that refutes this idea of humans being replaced is the computer vision-based diagnosis, where, I mean, you still need humans to label the training data set, right? And make sense of the model output for safe interpretation, especially in healthcare, because consequences can be disastrous for patients. What you are seeing is more of machines and AI augmenting and assisting humans, not replacing. One of the misconceptions that very often stood out to me as a leader in data science is that data needs to be perfect in order for AI to work. This is just not correct, right? What is true instead is, I guess, this is more of a case that we should make, but in AI, data should be clean enough and good enough to create an AI system that is also good enough. Even if you have just a couple images, for example, to train a neural net, make them labeled by humans and get your model to an acceptable level of accuracy rather than chasing tiny increments for model accuracy. Data is not and will never be perfect, especially at scale. Lastly, for years, leaders invested heavily in AI, assuming that the more you invest, the bigger the ROI will be, which is wrong, because all depends on the maturity of your AI implementation. Paint the big picture, start small, and invest as you scale. With that said, I will now hand it over back to Bingqian, who will walk us through the analytics and AI maturity framework.
Thank you very much, Youssef. Thank you. So yeah, as you have seen, the challenges and misconceptions that Youssef showed us, a lot of those are related to visions and big thinking, but also a lot of those related to the data foundation that we have. And one of the things that Youssef said was, since the ROI of analytics and AI is not necessarily 100% positively correlated with the investment size, when you're thinking about, what kind of investment to make or where to make those investments, it's worth thinking about that question in the context of the maturity that your organization is in. So you might be familiar with this framework that we're sharing here on screen, especially the first 4 stages, where it goes from descriptive analysis, so figuring out what happened in the past, to diagnostic analysis, which is understanding why things happened, and moving on to predictive analysis, which is predicting what might happen in the future, to prescriptive analysis or analytics, which is translating those insights into action so that you can actually do something to improve the business outcome. We've also added number 5 here, which is comprehensive AI system, which is what we do here at Aktana. And this is at the top level of complexity and business value. But what's worth pointing out here is the diagnostic analysis, which is what you do in level 2, and the machine learning pilots, which is what you typically do in level 3 or stage 3, builds the foundation for better AI optimization system up on the maturity ladder. And you're going to see a lot of examples that we're going to share throughout the session today. So now moving on to the 3 tips that we want to share to extract value from the data you have today. Tip number 1, from reporting to analytics. Number 2, from talk to action, your data is your hero. Tip number 3, take stepped approach to nail quick wins while building AI roadmap. I'm going to dive straight into tip number 1, from reporting to analytics. Now, you might be familiar with the kind of dashboard style that I'm sharing here on the left-hand side of the screen. In this case, this is a dashboard about rep-triggered emails. So you can see sort of top-level KPIs of how many emails have been sent, what's the percentage of delivered, opened, and clicked. And also there's a trend line showing you the historical trend on monthly basis, and then some breakdown by products, by templates, and by geography as well. Now, what I'm suggesting here is to think of analytics as investigation work. So really, it's going from that descriptive analytics to diagnostic analytics. And it's about understanding the behaviors from the data so that you can answer the so what question, so that you can translate, the findings and the insights into actually what can be done to improve business outcomes. And here is the real example, right? So with the same kind of data about HCP email engagement, what you can see here is a slightly different angle of analysis. And this is email open on HCP level. So on the left-hand side, you can see the percent of email opened, which is shown by green, and not opened, which is shown by gray, on HCP level. So each row is one person. And if the whole row is gray, it means they didn't open any of the emails that's been sent to them. If the whole row is green, it means they opened 100% of the emails that's sent to them. And if it's half-half or kind of mixed, it means they opened some emails, but not others. On the right-hand side is the context. So this is the total number of emails that's been sent to the HCP. So as you can imagine, if that number is 1, the left-hand side is not as meaningful because it just means they opened or didn't open 1 email. However, as that number goes up, especially it goes over 5, 10, 20 emails, it starts to become more meaningful. So really what we can start doing is we can segment HCPs by their open rate or their engagement patterns. And we recognize those non-engagers, so who didn't open any of the emails that's been sent to them. The question that we can ask ourselves is, how can we reduce the number of those non-engagers? And arguably, you should ask your rep to talk to those HCPs before sending more emails, because maybe those emails just go straight into their spam folder, or maybe they're blocked by their email systems, right? And for those occasional engagers who open some of the emails but not others, what we can do, or what we should ask ourselves is, how can we improve those engagement overall through maybe personalization? As you're collecting more data on what kind of emails they open and what they didn't open, you can start using machine learning models to extract those engagement patterns, which then can help to suggest maybe the best day or time to send emails, or maybe the most relevant content to use for their interest. And those more personalized experience thereby increases the engagement likelihood. And lastly, for those high engagers, HCPs that open absolutely everything that the reps have sent to them, the question that we can ask is, how do we learn from the success and empower those highly engaged HCPs? And really, here is where we can start bringing other data sources as well, such as prescription data or perception data, so that this can help you to identify perception changes, or maybe even the next generation of KOLs and influencers. I have another example here, which is on HCP engagement journey. So we've been talking about multi-channel and omni-channel for a while, right? But here is, a really consolidated data from those different sources that forms or paints the picture of the HCP's 360 engagement from different channels. So you can see on the top graph here, this is one HCP and showing their engagement journey. You can see, this person has been having face-to-face interactions since beginning of 2018, all the way through to beginning of 2020. COVID hit and everything shifted to virtual. So after that, you can see there's some phone calls, some emails being sent out, some remote detail as well. And this is all interesting, but what makes it even more powerful is you can start to drill into those customer journeys and really understand what leads to successful engagement. So what's showing beneath the overall engagement, the 360 engagement, is a zoom in picture of all the email engagement. So it shows you all the emails that has been sent to the same HCP on different products. And some of it they opened, some of it they didn't open. For this one that's selected, that's been sent in April, we can see that they opened this email. And you can see it's actually an email that's following up a phone call with the HCP, and they actually opened the email. So this example shows you sort of how we want to bring together those different data sources and understand what context leads to those successful engagements. And really the objective or the goal of this is to inspire the design of smart suggestions and even AI modules, which then can turn the insights into action at scale, so that you don't have to do those detailed analysis on individual basis, but instead you can have AI modules that just kind of automatically runs in the background and sending out suggestions based on those individual behavioral patterns. So that's our first tip. Moving on to the second tip, from talk to action, your data is your hero. One of the questions that we get asked a lot by our customers is, how do you know what kind of AI solutions we're ready for? So we do this readiness assessment exercise where we look at 3 pillars, which is technology, data, and business processes. Today, we're going to do a double click on the data because that's what the session is focused on. And really, by answering different layers of questions on data, helps you to decide what the next steps you need to take in order to get your organization ready for those AI-driven solutions. So for instance, if you don't have enough data history, maybe it's about doing a data collection prioritization exercise. If your data quality is not good enough, maybe it's about designing a data processing pipeline to ensure those data qualities are good. Maybe if your data is not fit for purpose, it's worth considering alternative machine learning objectives, which achieves the same business objective, but using different machine learning algorithms. Or maybe it's going back to that data collection prioritization if you need to collect different data to fit the purpose. And then based on the understanding of your data, you can then design the solution that fits the best, the data foundation that your organization has. So here's another example that's about readiness assessment, and this is specifically about one AI module, which is timing optimization. And what we're trying to do here is really to quantify the business value of those specific modules, and also kind of assess the scope of impact. So in a nutshell, what we're able to do here is we identified 50% of the HCPs, obviously a made up number based on a case study, are identified as high impact by this timing optimization AI. Essentially what that means is, we, based on analyzing historical data, 50% of the HCPs where, the engagement success really depends on the time that you send emails, whereas in the other 50% either engage anyway, or they don't engage anyway, regardless of the time. And we're also able to estimate the lift in average open rate by 20%. And again, this is all possible based on, the historical data that you have. So what this allows you to do is really quantify those business values for different AI modules and eventually for your AI ambition, so that you can decide which part, which area you want to invest first. Again, going back to the misconceptions and challenges that Youssef mentioned, thinking about your investment really as investing those priority areas that gives you more return on investment first, instead of thinking, whatever you put in will give you the same amount out. Now, moving on to the last tip, tip number 3, which is take stepped approach and nail quick wins while building your AI roadmap. And the example that we're sharing here is something that we do at Aktana, but the principle and the thinking sort of guidelines applies to any areas that you might be working in as well. And the idea is to identify the low-hanging fruits, again, as Youssef mentioned earlier. So the questions that we ask ourselves or ask our customers to help them identify the low-hanging fruit is, number 1, do we have clearly defined business questions? Number 2, can we translate those clearly defined business questions or problems to analytical problems that we can solve with data? And number 3, do we already have data that we collected in the past that can help to answer those analytical questions and maybe help to validate some of the hypotheses that we have? And if the answer to those 3 questions are yes, then there you go, you have your low-hanging fruit. So I'd like to hand back over to Youssef to share the quick wins that they're achieving at Genentech while building their data science team internally, as well as the long-term AI roadmap. Back to you, Youssef.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bingqian. I wouldn't agree more with what you just said in terms of low-hanging fruits and having this incremental win over the journey of AI in general. At Genentech, we were convinced of two things, actually, very, very basic. Having an integrated customer experience powered by data and AI, it's not optional anymore. It's not something that you have the choice to do or not do. It's happening no matter what. The second is that while AI is a promising technology, it has to be infused gradually in our ways of working, especially when it comes to providing, for example, our reps with machine generated recommendations to help them maximize opportunities of engaging with our customers. And I think we have seen that in the Derek's video. He mentioned that level of trust and so on and so forth. It's very, very important. In fact, in the very, very beginnings of building our ML based recommendation engine, we actually adopted a lean approach with the resources we had at the time. So my team is small but mighty, where we did not wait for our data to be perfect, to be honest. Then once we got buy-in from the top leaders or leadership in the company, we laid down the full roadmap, and we selected Aktana actually to help us scale. Because the core business of Genentech is not building software and selling AI to others. Instead, we also have an approach of what I call open innovation, where collaboration with external experts can definitely give you that advantage to move fast, especially at scale. Our roadmap included all channels in the business and roles like TAMs, the HDs, the HEDs, and so on and so forth within the organization, who will be using that recommendation engine at different levels, right? We did something which is basically just broken down this roadmap into small groups of early adopters by therapeutic area, so we can quickly experiment and adjust our model as we go. It was very, very important for us actually to rapidly put something in the hands of our reps so they can start experimenting with the technology themselves and also help us improve it. We did not wait that long to start hearing, in fact, some very, very good and positive feedback, such as the one from our rep who was new to her area and who got a set of ML-generated suggestions that led her to engage with an HCP she didn't even know he existed in her area. More than that, because of the quality of the suggestions generated by the machine, the rep, developed a trust in the engine and became now one of our advocates to embark more reps in the adoption journey. I hope that through these stories and Bingqian previous slides and examples, we contributed in helping you find opportunities in your own data, and that we somehow succeeded, and I hope we did, in demystifying AI and ML adoption for you by providing real world examples.
Thank you, Youssef. I really like that example. And yeah, as you said at the very beginning, it's not about building AI to replace human, right? And human intervention and interaction is always needed. It's about how do we make sure we build something that helps us do our job better, easier, faster, more effectively. So thank you for sharing that story.
Absolutely, thank you.
So that takes us to the end of our session, where we shared those 3 tips on how to find opportunities in your data today. I'd like to, before we end the session, I'd like to share a few more words on data science practice, which is essentially the discipline of machine learning and AI. The science nature of data science means that it's usually an iterative process, and maybe you have heard this in many other contexts before, but what does that really mean, right? It means that the design of the next experiment is based on the outcomes and learnings from the previous one. So you shouldn't wait for the perfect time to start experimenting. Start today and plan well so that you can mitigate some of the risks and just make sure you capture all the learnings along the way. Thank you very much for joining the session, and I look forward to your comments and questions. Dario, back to you.
Hello, and certainly very interesting discussion. So let's kick off with a Q&A. And with our first question, we received many very interesting questions, but one in particular which seems quite intriguing, and this is, it seems like most ventures into AI begin with a field team. Are there specific reasons why this is the first way in, and is this the best, and if so, why? Versus beginning with HCP-facing digital tactics or consumer-facing tactics. Bingqian, let's start with you.
Maybe we can start with Youssef, because I know, Youssef, with the scope that you're working on with us already, I know this already covers more than just field-based. So I'm sure you have a lot of insight to share on this.
Certainly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do we have a precision in the question whether, because field can be both also like medical and commercial? So just to make sure we're to direct the answer and make sure that you have the right level of details. But anyhow, yes, you're right. So when I joined Genentech, so when I took over the next best action, for example, capability development with Aktana, our roadmap, which was really detailed roadmap, started with the field because, and we created even a fab, like a field advisory board to help us basically accelerate. It's not an easy thing, right? Like it's not an easy area of the business to start with, as opposed to what we can think. Data is very complex, and like I said, not every time clean and in a good place. But we started with that because we had probably, on the commercial side at least, like less constraint from compliance. We still had compliance basically, but we had less constraint to compared to what we can have in medical. But also because the experience itself provided us with more early adopters. We have more roles in commercial than medical. There is another aspect. We had internally a huge expertise on marketplace. Basically, for me, field, it's not only a therapeutic area. It's also a marketplace where, to your point, Bingqian, we need to create this level of segmentation that shows our customers' personas. And the field is very, very rich for that, right? I'm not saying we cannot do that in medical, we can do it, but with different set of tools and different type and flavor of data. That was for us the quick win, and was the reason, I think, to be honest with you, like 60-70% of what people do in engagement, you will have a lot of commercial. And because commercial cannot go without medical, because the customer will always ask you scientific questions. So you need to recenter the question around medical engagement and patient engagement as well. Because for me, it's a chain. Like you engage with the customer, which is most of the time referred to as an HCP, but actually a customer is like a double or twofold kind of persona, because behind the HCP there is another very important customer, which is the patient. So I would say it's very opportunistic actually. So if medical had less constraints and was less legacy, I'm sure like we will see more use cases and everyone will start first with medical. This being said, there are also like some very, very cool things in medical. Medical is very unstructured data based actually, and it needs and necessitates a lot of data processing when it comes to natural language processing and all these kind of fancy things. But it's not impossible. It's just that to really get value very quickly and create, I would say, a model in the experimentation phase, commercial seems a natural, and field especially seems to be a natural choice for multiple companies. And we have actually feedback from other companies in the industry who really take the same path. But again, it's not about field, medical, commercial. It's about the vision of the leaders of the omni-channel experience. At the end of the day, you have to create that omni-channel. It's not something you can avoid, even if you have opportunities with the field first. But low-hanging fruits, you get it. We want to get AI and ML very quickly out there and put it in the hands of people. So I think field is a good start.
Thanks, Youssef.
Cool.
Bingqian.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, just kind of share my perspective as well. So the way that I think about it, whether we're talking about commercial, medical, whether we're talking about field, digital, it's somewhat similar to drawing reference to the presentation earlier, sort of the framework that we use for readiness assessment. We look at the 3 different pillars: technology, data, and business processes. There's a reason why we look at those 3 pillars, because you need those 3 to support a successful AI implementation, right? So take business process as an example. If you have absolutely all the processes and activities defined out, in this circumstance, you should do this, under, given this scenario, you should do that, then there's no room for AI to play a role. Where if you want, machine learning or AI to make suggestions and give recommendations, you have to have that kind of flexibility in your business processes to allow that kind of, I guess, intelligence to come in, right? So I would say those 3 areas are where I would think about, what kind of opportunities are low-hanging fruits, or where we're seeing more opportunities and more solutions being developed first. But then there's also, I would say, maybe it's also a matter of, what kind of solutions or technology, or I don't know, whatever vendors that you're exposed to, because I do think, whether it's medical, commercial, or field versus digital, I do see a lot of AI work being done in all those areas. So and there's a lot of opportunity. Like we're not lacking data. We have data everywhere. We're not necessarily lacking technology. And I'm sure Youssef would agree. Like in terms of machine learning algorithms, a lot of them are very similar. You can leverage the similar type of algorithm across the board, whether it's natural language processing, whether it's whatever neural network classification. A lot of the sort of algorithm behind the design of the solution is very similar. So yeah, I think there's opportunity everywhere. But yeah, the way I think about it is more kind of from the different pillars and looking at the maturity that way. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Youssef and Bingqian. It was really a great session. And to our audience, if you have any further questions for our speakers, they will be hanging out in the Ask the Expert booth for the next 15 minutes. So thanks again, Bingqian and Youssef. It was really a great pleasure, and looking forward to the next session.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.